Okay.
Shit.
Yeah. Episode 6. Things got weird.
Yeah.
Real quick, since we're real bad at this, welcome to Behind the Veil, where we do our best to come down from having just played a session of our Shattered Veil campaign, and we take a deep dive into some of the wilder moments, some of the crazy character stuff. So we're just coming off of the end of episode 6, which hopefully you've all seen by now. It ends with Reeve forgetting themselves. It seemed as though Marin still knew who you were and was trying to speak your name to get your attention. You couldn't hear it.
I was real nervous when Reeve had read through the ritual and there was the line about forgetting a name, and I was like, oh fuck. But I wasn't sure like if they would forget their own name, if they were gonna forget Quinn's name, if they were gonna forget somebody else's. But I was like, it was definitely a mind fuck, because we're already dealing with someone who struggles with identity, and then now they're missing another part. Well played.
Uh, well, this is potentially a spoiler, but maybe not too much. It won't be permanent.
I figured it couldn't be permanent.
Right. We still have to be able to play this somehow, right? So, um, it is going to last for 1d4 days.
Okay.
And now that you've performed a ritual in contact with this artifact, the Mask of Yellow, you're finally attuned to it.
Ooh.
So you will get some benefits out of it while wearing it. I'll share some of the detail. I'll create this item to share it with you so that you can add it to the inventory and everything. But essentially,
Yeah.
it has a couple of different traits and abilities that come along with it. Once per long rest, as an action, you can kind of invade another creature's mind. They make a wisdom saving throw, and on a failure, they're stunned until the end of their next turn. And regardless of their success or failure, you learn the target's a secret or a hidden fear from the target. Another one is while wearing it once per day, you can gain advantage on a charisma check. Finally, it also allows you to cast See Invisibility once per day.
Okay.
There is one other thing to note about this, though, and you will have already begun to feel these effects. The mask wears you as much as you wear it. Every long rest that you take while wearing the mask, you'll need to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failure, the mask will begin to corrupt you.
Okay. Oh shoot, that's a fun mechanic. I like that. I also like the thought of invading a creature's mind when in combat. It gives like the same kind of flavor with awakened mind, but instead of getting
Hmm.
like advantage or disadvantage, you get like a little bit of like I'm gonna fuck you up just a slight bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I like the idea of them being stunned by this
mhm.
fear or secret that you're like revealing. You like bring it to the forefront of their mind and they are
Oh yeah,
immobilized by it.
because I mean that's a big thing too. I think just for like psychological like horror and that like dive into like psyche more is the ability to dig up those deep fears and those secrets. And this is something that people traditionally bury deep inside. It should stun you. There should be an effect when it's revealed.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm excited to see how we get to use that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like we need to process the ritual a bit more. But before we do that, I want to go back to the beginning of the episode, if we can,
Mm-hmm.
and just talk about Mother Yelva a little bit and impressions of that encounter. What were your thoughts or takeaways?
So Mother Yalva scared the crap out of me in episode 5, both as Reeve and as like me, Janna. I was
Hmm.
like I don't do horror movies very well, and like I've been gradually getting more into it with my partner and like learning a little bit more, but just that horror movie trope of wizened women who have malicious intent, like something about that just scares the hell out of me. And I mean, maybe part of that is like growing up in the Southwest and getting the stories of La Llorona told to us when we were younger. It was like, no, we don't
Hmm.
fuck around with that. um, but it was something too that kind of like struck me in that interaction is Quinn had this fear of Mother Yelva and was, I mean, immediately like turned and ran. Like the minute that she was like, "You can give it to me instead," Quinn was like, "Oh hell no, I'm out of here, peace," and took off. And Reeve, I realized like Reeve doesn't run from what they fear or
Hmm.
really anything. Um, and it's kind of funny because I know that I had messaged you this weekend as well. And I'm like, I have been like inspiration overload. When I had like that one day to myself and I was like decompressing, I was like, holy crap, this is like really good stuff. I need to write it down. And that was actually oddly one of the revelations that I had like during that time was like, Reeve doesn't run away from anything. They're going to run with
Hmm.
it or it's going to run from them.
Hmm.
So that was kind of like that inspiration of that like one moment.
I enjoyed that a lot because yeah, it was a like refreshing change in personality and problem solving,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to be able to face one situation, one enemy really, with two different perspectives, so close together is pretty cool because that's not something we've done yet, I don't think, and it's not the kind of thing that you get to do really in this game or any game. Like you don't get two chances at the same
Yeah.
encounter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so to get two chances and to play them both differently is pretty cool.
No, I really like that moment. I'm glad we were able to like circle back to it too, like and have that opportunity to re-explore it through a different perspective and lens. Um, Reeve is like one of those characters that I am just like so torn with because I'm like, man, this guy person is like so badass. They're like willing to go at it. They're willing to like just take on whatever. But they're also so impulsive and so bold that they don't actually think of the consequences of what they're doing.
Mm.
And funny enough, I think that ties into the ritual because they were like, yeah, no, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And now there's consequences that they don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am trying to here and there, when I'm doing my parts, anyways, to incorporate some like contextual foreshadowing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, without saying too much, like Mother Yelva's reaction to Reeve is meant to be kind of telling in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Yelva wasn't afraid of Reeve. Mother Yelva wanted to eat Reeve's dreams, essentially,
Right.
and or secrets, or inner parts of their self. It was the other presence in Reeve that scared Mother Yelva off, and that is something that Reeve is not afraid of, or I don't even know if they're aware of. I mean, they're aware of this other presence, but it's strength. I don't know
Yeah.
if that is something that is on their mind consciously.
I Again, I don't think like Reeve recognizes the consequences of their actions or um the consequences of their existence, honestly. I think that's another really interesting part about that character is um they came out of a moment of trauma and trying to escape or protect themselves. And I think they're still kind of like trying to figure out their purpose is part of it as well.
Mm.
Um, and they don't understand quite what the expectation of them is either. So they're trying to like figure out like what their purpose is, what their identity is. They know that they have this sense of being tied to something else, but I don't know if they actually understand like what that tie actually is, whether it is um, being restrained, being connected. And I think that's something that they're still trying to figure out, which it also kind of led to like Reeve realizing they don't know much about Quinn either and wanting to understand Quinn, which is why they were like questioning Marin, like, what do you know about Quinn? What is your relationship like? It doesn't seem like
Yeah.
Quinn trusts you, so why should I?
Right. It's a little bit of like, who am I in the context of who I was
Yeah.
or who I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, I don't know. It's an interesting way to try to figure out who you are. It's an inaccurate way to do it, right? Obviously, because Reeve is their own
Yeah.
person, but they have nothing to base their existence on,
Mm-hmm.
um, and are still figuring out probably who they want to be. Also, um,
Yeah.
not just like who am I or where have I been, but where am I going and why am I going there?
Yeah, and I think that's too like the interesting thing with character development, because I know we talked through it when we first started talking about this, is what is the history of this character? Who are they? And we both immediately realized like there's no history with Reeve. They're like literally just figuring things out as they go. Um, and how do you do that as someone who doesn't have a history or doesn't have previous experiences to pull on, that you just literally have like come to fruition in this physical realm, but you don't have like a connection with other individuals. You don't have a family. You don't have a history or a lineage. So you don't have these items or these concepts of like that root, I guess, of identity. Like, this is where I come from. And Reeve is missing that. So how do you build the identity based on not having those roots? I mean, because when we talk about character development too, like one of the key pieces when developing characters is, what is their backstory? What is their motivation? What's their purpose? Why are they adventuring? Like,
yeah.
And I know you and I are very like in tune with this, that we are very anti, like, you don't always need a traumatic backstory for a character to make a good character. And I think it's a good twist for us too, because we have a character that was essentially born out of trauma. So it's this fun play of like, when is it relevant and when does it make sense? And then how do you go backwards from that? Because we don't have that foundation like you typically would with a normal character development.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and we're developing two characters at the same time out of sort of that same instance. One of them had a head start, sure, but, you know, they are both actively undergoing change at a rapid pace as, you know, the world kind of crumbles around them. I find, so this might be a bit of a tangent, but I find your portrayal of Quinn as a somewhat deceptive person to be really interesting. Quinn is like the kind of person that lies to themselves so much that it doesn't feel like lying to anyone else when they speak.
Yeah.
And that makes me almost kind of feel like, in some ways, to kind of tie this back to what you were talking about, that Quinn's backstory isn't even a real backstory or their own real story. It's the story they've been telling themselves is true about themselves, but isn't really the truth of themselves. So Quinn's story of life is, I'm this studious, professorial advocate for the saving of magic and everything it means. But the truth is something closer to scared, power hungry. So yeah, I don't know. I find it intriguing that yes, one of them had a head start with an actual backstory and some history and some years of life. But is any of that meaningful in the context of the truth of Quinn? And is it meaningful in the context of Reeve's existence?
Yeah. And I like that you use the word deceitful. Because it really is like, and I think that's something that I have really tried to show with Quinn is, and just realizing too, like this overlayer, like, and I don't know if we did this like on some weird subconscious wavelength, but they're just a person who wears masks. They're going to present as one way to everybody else because they can't confront what they really are. It's kind of like that extreme of like fake it till you make it. So they think if they project this like outward deposition of being highly intelligent, clever, and skilled, and then knowing that deep down inside they really don't feel like that. You know, I feel like they deep down inside are a very scared child, is what I feel. And more of that, like, you know, when you were younger, you were like, I just want to grow up and be able to do like all the adult and grown up things. And then when you actually get there, you're like, oh shit, hell no. And I kind of feel like those are the consequences that Quinn has to realize. Like, this desire to be this all powerful individual, it's not what it's cut out to be. And I think they're going to eventually find like what they want is not what they need.
Mhm. And it's interesting because that motivation is what is driving both Quinn and Reeve.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, Reeve is the only one really suffering the consequences, or at least suffering the first kind of major
Yeah.
consequence of that motivation. This forgetting of their being, their name.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. There's just a. At what point will the sort of the impetus of power and growth from Quinn's perspective stop being enough for Reeve? You know,
Yeah.
when will Reeve decide this is not for me? If they will decide that, or
Right. Yeah. And
I mean, I
I
suppose
think
it depends who pays the price, but
yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's the thing because here's the other part is even though Reeve is part of Quinn, Reeve is overly confident, is what I feel like. Like, Reeve knows that they have this power, that they have this ability to like exceed these expectations, and they are emboldened to do so. But there are also really impactful things that come out of that emboldenment because it's a lot of like not looking before you leap. Which I feel like is probably Reeves' mantra deep down inside. They're like, no, let's just go for it.
Mhm.
um, like the true epitome of like, fuck around, find out. We'll see what happens, and
Yeah.
not really recognizing the repercussions. So I'm really curious with going through the next few sessions is how is Reeve gonna rectify like or handle that? Yeah, things are gonna happen when you do shit. There are consequences. And the consequences can affect you. It's not just those around you. Um, which I think will play into as well, like now that Reeve has seen the consequences of their own actions and how it affects them, are they going to be cognizant of their actions affecting others and more specifically affecting Quinn?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm curious to see how they both digest the repercussions of the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Reeve didn't know Alaric, but Quinn did, and
Right.
we'll probably have some feelings about what took place in the catacombs. And Reeve is certainly having feelings about not knowing who they are. What I find interesting is they've both been kind of, I mean, you referred to the pull. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they've both been getting pulled along um, for this patron's purpose.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit by their own motivations as well. But is there going to be a push back at some point? When does it become a push pull? And
Mm-hmm.
why? What's the like breaking point? What is the step too far? And when other people are also like egging you on, like the cultists, for example, some of them were welcoming to Reeve immediately. So when you walk into a room and people are like, okay, yeah, you're here to do the thing, go do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that's the thing you want to do, and then suddenly there are these potentially awful consequences from it. Was it the right thing to do? and how do you feel about that moving forward?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's going to be like the wild thing too. Folks, peer pressure's a thing.
Yeah,
um, and especially
it's
when you
something
don't,
Reeve is feeling a lot of.
yeah, well, and I think too, especially when you don't have like the experience to understand what it's like to be in those situations or how you would respond to it. Like, this is the first time like Reeve has really done that. And probably like one of the times that Reeve was like, oh shit, like I'm kind of accepted. I'm a big deal right here. Okay. Um,
Were you feeling anything like that during that
yeah.
moment? Did you feel like powerful or
Oh yeah. Like, definitely like when the first like cultists like were like, oh yeah, hey, welcome, I I mean, and that's part of it. Like the interaction that Reeve had with the high priest when the high priest was like, hey, don't let this person interrupt their ritual. And that moment where um Reeve was like, you have no idea who you're talking to. Like, that definitely was like a sense of power and confidence. I mean, it just, again, that emboldenment from the cultist, from their patron, like all these different things were feeding into that. And I mean, how easy is it to fall into that trap of listening to all these outside influences telling you, like, hey, yeah, if you do this, you're going to be liked, you're going to be powerful, you're going to be confident, that we all would naturally fall into that.
what about the invocation or the truth? Did those what did you think about those or what did you feel from those?
The the invocation, like it was really cool to kind of like have that, like, ooh, this is like a big moment, kind of thing. But when we were going through and then the truth reveal, I was like, oh fuck, there's gonna be, like, as the player, behind the character, I was like, oh, the shit's about to go down. This isn't going to be good. So, like, kind of like understanding like those kinds of mechanics, especially when you're setting up like storytelling and things like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of reading between the lines and seeing that, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
um, and sometimes, like, as a player, it's a little hard to separate that, and like resist the urge to metagame. I'm like, I know shit's gonna go down as like the player behind the character, but my character doesn't
Yeah.
realize this. Like, my character is in the space of, I am the star of the show right now, and I'm having my big solo and
Mm-hmm.
keeping them in that space. So there's definitely like a little bit of that like tug happening at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like it's probably even more challenging in like the instance of how we're running this game because we share the plans a little bit here and there. You had no idea what this session was going to be,
Yeah,
but
no.
we kind of know where the story's going. And after this, I'll have some more like details to share with you. But point being, like you have even more incentive or like ammunition to metagame with.
Yeah.
So it's even harder, I think, to turn your brain off and just be the
Yeah.
character.
And I do think that's like one of the things that I think is a really fun challenge of how we are approaching this. Because we do have that opportunity to kind of like share knowledge and story build and world build together, as well as do the character development and be that player together, which is a very unique experience. Um, but really putting yourself in the mindset of like, this is the character, and even though I have this knowledge, they can't. So I need to
Yeah.
play it through and see how they would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. Something for me as a player that I do like to do with my characters is I will usually make notes very specifically about like certain personality things, um, to help guide like any decisions that I have to make in character to help stay in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll usually study that before like we'll come into games. So I'm like, okay, this is the character I'm playing. This is what their motivations are. These are like the key features of personality. And I might even like sit down and do like a little bit of like thought, like what are things that they would say? What are ways that they would react in certain situations? And I realized like that, because a lot of people are very into like the improv piece of D&D. Like it's all improv. You just need to go with the flow. But part of good improv is also good character study and knowing who your character is.
Yeah. I find it's so much easier in this like collaborative setting to find our characters also and to find our story. Like you talked about having a inspiration storm over the past weekend.
Yeah.
It has been so much easier to feel inspired and just let that flow and turn into writing in this process, going back and forth, from one another. If I feel like stumped at some point, you have come up with ideas that we've already expressed, in the story to help inspire new ways to turn. Um, the secret that you revealed was inspired by your sessions 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, the back and forth helps on I think all fronts, all aspects of like getting the creative juices flowing.
Yeah. No, and I do think it's so helpful to have like someone I can bounce stuff off of, or like I'll sit down and like decompress afterwards. Because I mean, I know we do our little behind the veil, but I will go straight downstairs and be like, "Hey, Alan, guess what we talked about? Guess what happened tonight?" Um, and my kiddo probably tomorrow morning will get it, and they actually usually
Yeah,
ask if they know we had a session. Like, so what happened last night?
that's cool.
um, I mean, and it's fun because um, being able to have like a creative outlet like that where you have so many people that are supporting the creativity too, I think just really is so empowering. I guess is
Yeah,
the word. Like it's nice to have someone that you can collaborate with, and then like you can bring stuff out and like talk about it with your family and your friends. um I know that you and I both talked about like with the release of our first episode last week, um and sharing it with like our moms who neither
yeah,
of them understand D&D like at all,
yeah.
but they're like, I'll listen to it and I'll support it because I know it helps you guys.
Hmm. Yeah,
um
my mom finally watched it and she's like, I loved it. I have no idea what's happening, but I loved it. Um,
exactly. um because my mom was like pretty much the same thing. She's like, I have no idea what's happening, but she said she could immediately tell that both of us feed off of each other very well and that we have a good creative dynamic. Which I was like, yeah, fuck yeah.
yeah,
that and that's something that's really cool. Especially when you are someone creative, it's really tempting to silo yourself because you're also like, there are moments where you're like, wait, I don't want anyone to influence what I'm doing because you might be afraid of like plagiarism or copying something, and you try to like isolate yourself so you have like your own creative juices. But I feel like there's something to be said with having another person there that you can actually talk with and bounce ideas off of, because it really is. It's like you have this meat in front of you and then you get to season and spice it with other thoughts that you may not have had.
yeah. Yeah, I would expand on that a little bit further even and say when you're doing a creative pursuit, whether it's like art or cooking or music or D&D, whatever,
Mhm.
um, like you said, it can be easy to silo yourself, but it's even easier, or kind of this goes hand in hand maybe, but to just be afraid of sharing your stuff with people, like
Yeah.
even one on one, but also just in this format with an audience on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. Um, like just genuinely having a great time and creating whatever we want to and enjoying it, but letting people in on that can be really scary. It can be really daunting. But the support of having like a close friend to do it with, where we
Mhm.
just keep going and supporting it, and we're like, yeah, this is a great time, really like shoves all that other noise like to the back of your brain and out of conscious thought and lets you, I don't know. I feel like I've been my most creative self in the last 3 months
Yeah.
in this pursuit and in other pursuits, just because I think the act of us like just supporting each other and being creative and enjoying the stuff that we do
Mhm.
reinforces that on some kind of like subconscious level of it is okay to be loudly creative in whatever way you want to be. People like it, great. If they don't, great. If you enjoyed it, that's what matters the most.
Right. No,
It's a
I
hard thing, I think. It was for me to realize. I think it's a hard thing,
yeah.
maybe for others too, but it's taken me 30 something years to
Well, I say
get
and
comfortable with that,
like
you know?
and let's be real, like people who are creative and artistic and like you said that can be cooking, music, art, D&D. It's very vulnerable and it is
Mhm.
very like exposing to put yourself out there. Like I've always been creative. I have a very hard time like actually labeling myself as an artist though because I have always been scared of that vulnerability and there is that imposter syndrome which I think contributes to that as well. Um
Mhm.
but I have been drawing since I was like gosh, 4 or 5 years old. So, pretty much my whole life.
Mhm.
Since I was able to pick up a crayon is what my mom said. uh but I really did limit myself and I cut myself off because when I started going to school and studying, I originally went into communications and writing and then switched over to art because I was like, I don't want to do communications and writing because I felt like it was too much of a cutthroat field and I would have to have like super tough skin and being an artistic creative type, I just didn't feel like that was for me. I was like, I don't want to like sit there and tear myself down and become this like hardened person because I don't want to fail at something or be afraid of that failure. And I'm not that type of cutthroat person. And not that people who are in communications are cutthroat, but it is a very like competitive field. Um,
Mhm.
and I did have like personal experiences too, where I did have a lot of people like kind of go behind my back and steal a lot of the content or work that I was doing when I was writing. And that was really hard. So I switched over to art and I talked myself out of it because I was like, I am not good enough to do this. And I don't want to share this because I can't handle the criticism. And I went into psych instead.
Yeah, that's something I've felt also. That is like it's a challenge to overcome at some point in life, and you're not always
Mhm.
at that point in your life when you're faced with that challenge.
Yeah.
I think this, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, but this is sort of a way for me to like revisit that challenge and just jump straight over it. But I have somebody
Yeah.
holding my hand this time, pulling me to the other side too, which makes it a little bit easier to get over that hurdle. So I really appreciate this because, yeah, it's just an opportunity to feel like I can be a little bit more myself again.
Yeah. And I think that has been a lot of it for me too. Like when you said like this is the most creative you felt in the last 3 months, like and not just with this, but like with everything, like this has definitely like reignited something for me though that I've been able to like re-explore and I've been slowly like dipping back into being creative again, like exploring new modalities of art, like traditionally I had been doing like 2D visual art, so like drawings, paintings, things like that, and then exploring more 3D art with, dice making and resin crafting, and taught myself a new skill. Um, but this has reignited something in me too, because I have always been a very like passionate storyteller. I loved writing stories, telling like these narratives of like silly things that I used to think of, and like would write out like comic ideas and book ideas. Um, and I feel like this is reawakening that for me. And it's something really exciting because I have an area that I feel safe in doing that, which I think is the other part, is creating a space that feels safe to actually be open with that experience. Um, again, art's fucking vulnerable. It is very
Yeah.
like exposing. um, so I appreciate that this has become that safe space for me, and being able to have someone that I can like rely on, that is going to be honest but also not going to like diminish what I'm doing or where I'm going.
Yeah. I feel the same. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. I think too, like something else that we really created, and a lot of feedback that I've been getting from a lot of my friends, they're like, hey, would Nick be willing to like DM for us too? Just because you're so engaging. And I had like told other friends, like when we had started, I was like, yeah, no, Nick is a DM for one of the games that I play. And I had told them, I was like, he's just really engaging. He's just a great world builder and fantastic storyteller. And it's been really cool to like get to share that as well. Like, I'm like, hey guys, I'm not just talking out of my ass. Like, this guy is fucking talented as shit. But when you have like someone who has like that same kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good way to say it, like the same kind of like output, like you put out as much as I do, so I'm able to take in whatever you're giving me and like give it back. And it's nice to be able to feed off of each other like that. And I think that's something that has been really coming through too, is we really do feed off each other. Even though there is this like wild dynamic where we both play and DM, it shows how you can feed off each other's creative energy in a way that is not like diminishing of each other's creative energy.
Yeah, it's just that collaborative, like we both have the desire to tell a story and to keep the story going and to expand on it and to grow it and to just explore it. And when you bring that focus from both people to the same thing, yeah, it just kind of like takes on a life of its own. I feel like we don't even have to think about it. We just let the story grow because we're both invested in it the whole time. It's not like having players at the table who are on their phone scrolling Instagram or, only paying attention when it's their turn, not thinking about their actions or whatever. That stuff happens, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine. In a group setting, just playing a game, not everyone has the same kind of like engagement. Totally fine, totally fair. But when you are like us and you want to be really into the story, it is so much easier to do it with somebody who just has the same focus, the same goals.
Yeah. I love that you say focus, and just as my camera goes out of focus.
As your camera's out of focus, yeah. I
I'm
was
like,
thinking
God
the same
damn it.
thing.
There we go. No, and I think that's it too. Like, creative collaborative projects work best when you have people that are invested in it. Like, I think of a lot of the other actual plays that I've watched, like you can tell like people are super into it and they're paying attention, and those are the ones that are always like my favorite to watch, because everyone is just leaning in. And yeah, same thing, like everyone's engagement is going to be a little bit different on a table, especially when you have a large group and it's more casual play. Um, but I love when you see those players like hone in and they're so ready for it. They're like, yeah, what do I get to do? Um,
Yeah.
and I think those two also like build for some of the like more exciting moments. Um, when they do start leaning in and then you've got them hooked and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I've got you now.
Hmm.
um, and you can use that like to your advantage at the table to actually like bring more people to it and um, just be excited about it. It's escapism, and we should have like that opportunity to kind of like be pulled away from Instagram and scrolling and
Yeah. Get away
yeah.
from the regular
Mm,
distractions of life and just be in your imagination for a while. I
yeah.
enjoy it so much, which is why I try so hard to get other people into that
Mm-hmm.
too. Because I know, like, if you just put that down for a little bit and you engage, you
Mm-hmm.
will like feel this pressure relief,
Yeah.
like from inside yourself. That's what I get every week, anyways, playing D&D. Like as much effort and energy as we have to put into being creative sometimes, every
Mm-hmm.
time we do this, it is like this just pressure valve letting steam out of me, and I feel
Yeah.
calmed and like anxiety melts away and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because just being in my imagination for a while is freeing. Uh,
Yeah.
like I'm sure we've said this before. People say it all the time. Playing D&D like kind of allows you to relive your childhood in some ways. You can kind of be a
Mm-hmm.
kid again. You can spend time playing and just using your imagination. That is something that people should do all of the time, whether it's D&D or any other game or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
it's the thing we get to do the least as grown-ups, but the thing we should be doing the most.
100%. I think there's something to be said about having the opportunity to actually be in your imagination. Um, it gets so lost so quickly as we get older. Um, I mean, and I know, like, thinking about it as a parent, like, especially a parent today, like, when you reflect on the things that we used to do as kids and the things that
Mhm.
our kids are doing now, it's like, man, I don't remember like doing those things at like that age.
Right.
Like I was still like, I don't know, playing with Barbies or
Hmm.
whatever. And it definitely feels like we ask our kids to grow up faster now. And we don't give them the time to relish their childhood as much. I know that for me has been one of the reasons that I have definitely like when my kiddo approached me about playing D&D the first time and was like, hey, do you want to do this? And I kind of like looked more into it. I was like, fuck yeah, let's go for
Yeah.
it. Um, because it allowed them to be a kid. It allows them to live in their mind and be creative. And um, I know I've said this before, but I just think D&D is a great resource for kids to learn problem solving, to learn math, to learn how to work with a group, um, and how to build stories, which we don't do as we get older. And I think it's something that is definitely becoming more lost in culture, especially with things like the further development of AI and how that impacts the art world. Like, are we really letting ourselves be driven by creativity, or are we just using these recycled ideas that is fed into AI again and again?
Hmm.
So it is kind of one of those like I think playing D&D is also a little more human.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
it's the
team, that
best
was
part
my
of
TED
being
talk about
human.
AI. I'm going to step off my soapbox. But yeah, I think too, like when I think about like successful games and when we talk about like feeling that pressure release when we get to come to D&D every week, I think also it's something to be said about the DM style, right?
Mhm.
I think one of the more important roles as a DM is to create a space where people do feel safe in expressing themselves and getting to have fun and play. Because I have seen games where it has not been fun, and the DM might have like a I'm gonna punish my player complex, or a weird god complex about it, and it's like like you might have this like story built in your little world, but you you gotta let people play in it to have fun to actually
Mhm.
make it something. um and that's one of the things that I think I really appreciate about you as a DM is you are like, yeah, we built this world, we have this, but we're gonna play in it. It's open sandbox. We're gonna do what we want. The whole point is to have fun and discover and explore. Um, and we don't have like rule lawyering. I feel like both of us very much do follow like the rule of cool DM style. Or like, yeah, if it's fun,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and see what happens.
Right.
um, I mean, and I think there's like a time and place for it too. Like I've also had like situations at tables where I've had to be very like, all right, guys, we can't do that. Like that's not cool. I'm gonna have to rule lawyer this one and say, no, that's not possible.
Right.
Um, which is always wild when you have to do that with a group of 12 and 13-year-olds. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I
guys,
bet.
rein it in.
Navigating that is a whole, political
Mhm.
situation in and of itself.
Yeah.
Potential fiasco.
Hmm. But I think that's something too. Like if you're gonna come in and you're going to create a game for people to play, you have to actually let them play.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the guiding light. I think this is true of us, not to just toot our own horns, but I think this is true of us and should be true for everybody running games. Is like your guiding light has to be fun and collaborative creation, which I
Yes.
think it is for us, which is why we are having so much fun. But
Yeah, I that's 100% it. I think the ability to collaborate and bounce things off of one another and back and forth has really made this so enriching. Um, at least for me, I'm not going to speak for you, but I have found it
for me
incredibly
too.
enriching.
Yeah.
Like context clues, I feel like yes.
Well, a final thought for me then I think is going to be, if you don't feel that way at your table, find people that make you feel that way at your table. Find a group of people to play with that you enjoy being around, that let you feel like you can be yourself and you can express your innermost self in a safe and fun environment.
100% nailed it. No notes.
Well, I'm glad you feel the same way, and I'm glad that we get to keep being in that environment week after week. Anything? Any other final thoughts for you?
No, I can't think of anything else. I think you wrapped it up beautifully, Nick. I can't, I don't know what else to say. I was like, yeah, collaboration for fun.
Yeah,
Funlaboration? Is that a word? We're gonna make it a word.
fun elaboration. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, coming soon to Webster's.
My bad.
Well, thank you all for joining us behind the veil for episode 6. We got a lot more crazy stuff to come. I think, Janna, you'll be returning to the DM's chair next session, right?
I am. Thank you,
All right.
Inspiration Weekend.
Happy to release the reins back to you. It's going to be fun.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for Behind the Veil. We hope you found something helpful in here, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you when we're someone else.